Well, my name is Rebecca Eigen, and I am an astrologer in Houston, Texas. And I've written a book called The Shadow Dance and the Astrological Seventh House Workbook. And it's based on Carl Jung's theories of the shadow, which is everything about us that is unconscious, unexpressed, denied, and repressed. And I see 2019 and beyond, because of all the division we have in the world, as a time for our evolution, that we each own our own shadow. So learning about our unconscious and what's hidden and bringing it to awareness is what is called shadow work. And there's lots of different ways to see your shadow. I've written 250 pages about how to see your shadow, but to give you all a few examples, one would be people we avoid. We'll meet somebody and we don't like them, and we'll walk around the room to get away from that person. People that we hardly even know, we will project our shadow onto. When I started learning about this information, I had to go back into my memory banks. Like, there was this girl that I worked with when I was in my 20s, and I just didn't like her, and I'd like avoid her, and I'd walk around the room, and she worked in the same office I did. And as life would have it, they put her desk right next to mine. Our drafting tables were right next to each other. And so I had to get to know her. And she turned out to be one of my best friends in life. So it is remarkable how we will meet somebody and we will project our shadow onto them, and we don't even know them. We're only looking at a certain aspect of ourselves in the other person, and we have no idea that that's what we're doing. So projection and transference are the two basic phenomena that are inherent in every relationship. I mean, this is how we all start relationships, is through projection. And most of us by now have heard the term projection, but what we haven't heard is that we're not the one projecting. It is our unconscious that has actually projected itself out onto the other person. So it isn't of our own volition that this is happening. So when we meet somebody, we think we're relating to this person based on who they are is real, but what we don't know is that we don't even know them yet. Especially when we either, number one, really, really like somebody and fall in love with them, or the opposite, where we can't stand a person. So raise your hand. Have you ever met anybody you can't stand? And have you ever fallen madly in love? Well, say hello to your shadow. So the shadow is just like our physical shadow. It's behind us. We don't know about it. So one of the biggest hurdles to doing this work is realizing that there are parts in all of us that we do not know. And so when I was like in the early 80s, when I was learning all this stuff, or I started studying, I went to a conference in Washington, D.C., where I met Howard Sasportas, who back then was partners with Liz Green. And they wrote a book called The Dynamics of the Unconscious. And I was very impressed with him and his talk. And he gave a quote by Carl Jung. And I wrote it in my book, and I'm going to read it to you all. This made a huge impression on me because I'm a Libra, and Libra is the sign of balance and opposites. So the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. When the individual remains undivided and does not become conscious of his inner opposite, the world must perforce act out the conflict and be torn into opposing halves. So because there is a compensatory factor in the psyche is striving for wholeness, and wholeness is balance. So whatever we're highly identified with, the exact opposite is going to be in our unconscious to the same degree, the exact opposite. So think about it. Ask yourself, what am I highly identified with? And what is it that is repeating in my life? People will start coming to you in a repetitive fashion that you will get repulsed by, or that you'll be very drawn to. So it isn't like it's all negative and it's not all positive. It's both. Sometimes you can be totally attracted and repulsed by the very same person. So what's really, it's true, it's like, it's so interesting when you start doing this work. So the other thing that is very a basic phenomena in relationships is what Jungians call transference. We transfer our history with our parents onto that person unconsciously. So our hidden agenda is always to heal, to bring forth what was left out of that primary relationship, that sense of primal unity that we had with our parents. We want to go back there. James Hollis calls this the going home project. So we do this unconsciously. We transfer our history and we project our shadow, or our what Jung called our anima and our animus, which are the contrasexual images inside the psyche. So my work with people, with couples, and when I'm working with a couple, what I'll do is first I will hear one person's story separately. And then I will put the other person in there and get all their information and listen to what they feel about the relationship. Then I put them together, because when I first started doing relationship work with people, I found that they lied. But the chart doesn't lie. The chart is so amazingly accurate. It is a blueprint of our psyche. And whatever is in our 7th house, we have to learn how to share that with another person in an equal way. Because if we're lopsided, we're going to find somebody outside of us to do our inner opposite. And we aren't going to like them. After a while, they'll start doing it to an extreme. One guy came to one of my workshops and he said, I don't get this. You know, I don't understand what you're talking about. And he described his father. Well, here's another good one. Why do I always attract guys who end up living off of me? Then I get fed up with them and then I have to kick them out, and it's a really long process. And you've done this over and over and over. And she's like, over and over again. They'll have money before we get together. Then when they're living with me, they are suddenly stone broke. They don't have any money and they're having to rely on me. Then after they move, they have money again. Why does this continually happen to me? I said, probably because you're overgiving. This is what is really frustrating to me, she says. I don't stand on the side of the street with a sign saying, please come home with me. I said, I know. Jung says there is so much about ourselves that is unconscious. It's almost automatic. So we will unconsciously attract our opposites to us. One of my friends dated a guy like that, and another guy like that, and another guy like that. And then finally, I said, close your purse. And so he asked her for money, and she said, here it is. It's happening again. And she didn't. She said, no, I don't have the money to loan you. Can you please ask somebody else? Simple. These things sound simple in retrospect, but they're very difficult to discern. But doing shadow work can depotentiate all these huge imbalances that we have with other people, and especially in our primary relationships. And shadow work isn't just about our relationships with our significant other. This is relationships with children, with our coworkers, with our bosses. I had one girl come to me who left 3 high-paying jobs because all of her bosses were hypocrites. So doing shadow work is essential to the evolution of this planet. And until we do shadow work, we can't even get to what he called the self. And the self is when you're having the ego and the self are having a dialogue, and you're more and more and more relying on the self instead of the ego. And it is a process. Nobody does this overnight. But again, I will say that the 7th house and any planet in aspect to Venus, any planet that's in the 7th house is going to act as if it's in an opposition to Venus. So any planet in the 7th is going to have to be shared equally with another person, or they're going to overdo it and you aren't going to like them. And some people stay in relationships even when they're not happy anymore because they have children and they have to pay the mortgage, or their husband makes more of the money and they rely on him or whatever. But even if you leave that relationship and you go find another one, I recently had somebody who left a relationship. They met somebody on Facebook, they left that marriage, and they repeated it and called me and said, everything that you said is happening to me again. Well, a good look at yourself and your inner dynamics and your unconscious, and working with your unconscious takes time. It takes pen and paper work of journaling, because journaling is asking yourself, instead of why is this happening to me, we need to look at, there's a teleology in life. And teleology just means we have to know that these things are purposeful. And instead of asking why, ask what. What does the universe want from me? What is it about me that's out of balance?